So UFC 7 takes place on September 8th, 1995. The show opens with a nice video package here. These are often a highlight of the early shows, I can't even lie to you. The voice of Bruce Beck calls this the Olympics of the martial arts world, where years of blood, sweat and sacrifice brings you here to the Ultimate Fighting Championship. We have 8 guys from 5 continents, but only one can be the UFC 7 tournament champion. Later tonight we have the superfight champion against the UFC 6 champion Oleg Taktarov in the superfight. It is Shamrock versus Taktarov, but that is later. What happens next is from here we come up to the city of Buffalo, New York. We are at the Buffalo Memorial Auditorium with Bruce Beck on commentary again. Just 6 weeks after the last event, UFC 6, which was in Casper, Wyoming. And here we are now, Buffalo, New York. Bruce says that we have 8 fighters, 5 different countries. It was continents earlier, it's now countries, representing 14 different disciplines. Now that math is definitely mathing. Jeff Blatnick, friend of the show and co-commentator, takes us to the octagon before we are introduced to Don Wilson. They call him the Dragon, and here he is with the most 1995 haircut I have ever seen. And we have replaced one celebrity commentator with another. We'll see if Don is better than Jim Brown. Surely he can't be much worse. We run through the alternate matchups first. We have 3 here and the winners are on the screen. And then we go to the rules of the octagon. Similar to the rules of UFC 6, nothing really too different here. We then are able to see the tournament bracket. Here we see Varlins, Howard, Remco, Larry Thunderfoot down there at the bottom. Harold Howard is the only finalist here, and we have no winners in this tournament. And I mean, Harold Howard, he made the final, if you remember, because Chemo injured Royce Gracie in their first round fight. So he just got the bye into the final. So anyways, first up, we have Michael Buffer back again, introducing Varlins and Jerry Harris. No videos, no propaganda, just straight into the action. I like this. Varlins charges at Harris, grabs him, presses him against the cage before getting the takedown. Varlins strikes from the top and Harris just gives Varlins his back, who, instead of grabbing the choke, decides to risk broken hands, which we've seen before. But he switches to 12-6 elbows to the back of the head. Harris taps in just about a minute. I'm happy that Varlins is out of the t-shirt and into the wrestling singlet, I do have to say. Nice to see the 12-6 elbows get some love. That's kind of just become Varlins' thing after he slimed out some guy at that last tournament. I can't even remember his name now, that's so annoying. But next up we have Mark Hall against just the craziest looking motherfucker ever. Harold Clarence Howard, who you will remember from UFC 3, looking like a guy straight out of GTA Online. I think he might be in better shape here. He shaved the beard as well, but there is still a demon in those eyes. Crazy stance from Howard, like what the fuck is he doing here? Like MVP took notes off Harold Howard. Howard lands early, he gets the takedown, but I mean, Hall ends up on top, lands some good ground and pound here. Howard's bleeding quite bad. But Hall, like a pussy, starts grabbing Howard's hair, right? Just looks like he tries to eye poke him here too, but Howard ends up tapping. I'm not sure why. Hall starts celebrating like he's won the tournament already. And replays show Howard didn't even tap, he just throws up a fucking cross like he's trying to exorcise the demonic vampire, and then Big John stops the fight. Mark Hall is through. So that was an interesting way of tapping out. Like, I don't understand how... Like, I think you can tell the referee to stop the fight, but I don't know where the fuck he got thrown up the X. Like, what the fuck is he doing? But we move on, thankfully, to our third fight in the first round, and we have a returning Remco from UFC 2, and he's up against newcomer Ryan Parker. Again, no video packages. Like, at UFC 6, I said that I enjoyed that they removed the propaganda videos, but I do wish they let these fighters have some words before they fight. But I mean, this is the second best option, just to have nothing. And oh my fucking god, we have double geese in the octagon. I am getting Vietnam flashbacks to the absolute worst of Royce Gracie. I cannot escape this man. Double geese, double pussy. Remco takes down Parker, controls the arm. Some nasty strikes, but Parker doesn't tap. Remco tries to lock in a choke, but he can't. Like, this is the shit that he done to Orlando Veit at UFC 2, just a big fucking weight bully. Commentary then starts saying that Remco is going for a slow choke here, whatever that is. I just think if anyone in early day UFC comes out with a gi, or you see a gi in any other location besides jiu-jitsu or judo class, they're just soft, you know what I mean? But Remco here wins with an Ezekiel choke. Now is probably the best time to put in here that Don Wilson, an actual fighter, is a definite upgrade on Jim Brown, who knew nothing but to be biased towards Royce Gracie. Don Wilson actually has an idea of what's happening in there. The last fight of the first round is Marco Huas versus Thunderfoot, and Huas does not disclose his age. Like, does he not know when he was born in the favela, or is he embarrassed? Like, is he 50 years old at this point or something? Like, why would you not just say how old you are? But he calls himself the king of the streets. Huas with a great takedown. Like, I think this is the best takedown so far we've seen in UFC, probably second to Dan Severn's German suplex on Tony Macias, it was, wasn't it? But this was a definite close second. Huas looks for the choke from the bottom. Thunderfoot rips a couple of hard body shots. But you can tell, like, it's just a matter of time before Huas gets a submission, which he does get in about 3.5 minutes. The fight ends via heel hook. Marco Huas beats Thunderfoot, and he is advancing to the semi-finals. So we have our first semi-final coming up, and it is going to be Paul Varelans versus Mark Hall. Now, Mark Hall gets in here and does some Nazi salutes, very similar to Gerard Jordeau from UFC 1. So we are in full support of Varelans in this one, folks. And it doesn't actually last long. Varelans gets into like a side saddle position here, then mount before hitting those 12-6 elbows again. And then that ends up opening up the key lock. Easy submission win for Varelans. Another example of why you should always go for ground and pound before attempting a submission. Ground and pound will likely give you the opportunity to then submit your opponent, but it doesn't really work the other way around. Going for the submission like doesn't open up ground and pound, so you're just closing off one way to finish that fight. And at this point, right, I feel as though we're flying through the tournament so far. We have our second semi-final, Remco versus Huas. They start off hesitant before Remco attempts a standing choke against the cage. It also looks like he's trying to trip Huas, but he ends up just sort of holding Huas's leg there for a while without actually attempting to get a takedown. Remco just holds this headlock. You can't even call it a choke, right? We're at a stalemate here against the cage, and I'm wondering if Big John is actually able to break up the fighters whilst they're standing, or if he only does it when they're on the ground. Like, the rules are the referee can restart. Is it restart if I stand up the opponents? I'm sure it's stand up. So if they're already standing, can he split them? By the way, whilst I have these thoughts, 4.5 minutes have passed, right? And Big John won't stop screaming into the mic. I will say that the Octagon is mic'd very well. The production has improved since the first events. However, the overhead light being on and moving all over the action is so distracting, and how has nobody turned them off? Both fighters almost tumble to the floor. Huas is able to escape the headlock of doom after 6.5 minutes. But now we're just stuck in the Gracie position as Big John continues to scream. Huas tries for a heel hook. This attempt feels like it lasts for minutes on end as well. Remco escapes. We're back to the Gracie position. Huas is able to use the gi against his opponent to get into side control. It's amazing that someone would actually take advantage of their opponent wearing pyjamas in the Octagon. Huas gets into mount and Remco just taps. Nothing applied. No pressure. No strikes. He just tapped after 13 fucking minutes. I sat through that. And that was the finish. Remco is out. Huas advances to the final to take on Paul Varelans. And the time is upon us once more. The dreaded super fight. Oleg Taktarov versus Ken Shamrock for the super fight championship. 50k to the winner, by the way. 25k to the loser. 30 apiece if it is a draw. Now remember, these two did train together for the last UFC event at Lion's Den, which is Shamrock's gym. That's what that red flag is, with a black lion on it. And I'm not anticipating a violent affair here, and wouldn't you know. Shamrock takes down Taktarov, and they are in guard at this point. As soon as I seen them in guard, and commentary instantly says, well, I anticipate that Big John will need to stand him up at some point. The only thing that I can say, right, to sum up the feeling you have when you see that and when you hear that, is a hollowness, an emptiness. You wonder if you'll ever see two people fight again. Things feel so bleak, and it's almost as though life isn't actually worth living anymore. So now we are 15 minutes in before Big John has finally had enough and stands them up. And they go right back to guard. Oleg has a small cut on his eye from a head clash, and Bruce Beck says, oh, he'll be a bloody mess by the end of this one. Really? After the 20-minute mark, we have to stand him up again. No prizes for guessing what happens next, folks. We go right back to guard. I don't know how they didn't cancel the super fight concept after this. Like, 2 of the 3 fights have been some of the worst I have ever seen. And sure, there've been worse fighters with worse technique. However, these guys are supposed to be best of the best, top of the chain. Like, this is your featured match that your promotion is all going into, like, only behind your tournament final. And it took until the 23rd minute for commentary to say, well, I think that's the first punch that Taktarov has thrown all fight, as my blood begins to boil. The 28th minute mark, we get our third reset as Big John stands him up again, and the crowd don't even cheer for it this time. This is literally Gracie Shamrock all over again, just substitute Gracie for Taktarov. I could literally use the same review for UFC 5 for this matchup here. These two actually stand up for a whole 2 minutes until the end of the fight. Maybe a couple of jabs landed when they each threw, maybe 10, you know. We go into a 3-minute overtime because half an hour wasn't enough. And now they decide to throw for the first 5 seconds before clinching. They break, they stay standing. Shamrock probably had the edge on the feet because he looked less tired, but then Taktarov just pulls guard and settles for a draw. And I mean, both of them settled for a draw. Like, there's been a full half hour for you to win this thing. But that's also a half hour of my life gone. We're now between the first super fight and this one here. That's an hour that I cannot get back. The fight is announced as a draw, and the crowd boo because of course they did. And commentary praises how good of a defensive fighter Taktarov is. Read the room, lads, eh? Just a fair warning to everybody. See, when I've watched all these super fights, I'm clipping all these reviews together to try and get something out of this, because, I mean, I've wasted a whole lot of time here. Finally, the fight we've been waiting for, the last one. The time is upon us, the UFC 7 tournament final, Huas versus Varlins. The winner will get a spot at the next UFC event, the Ultimate. This is supposed to be like their super card of sorts for the UFC, like where they get the best fighters all into one tournament for the Ultimate belt. Like, it's different from a regular tournament, it's like a super tournament. At least that's what they tell us. Varlins charges across the octagon and eats some leg kicks from Huas. He's the first guy I've seen actually throw like consistent leg kicks. We've seen guys throw like a single leg kick almost just as a means to get contact on the opponent, but Huas is actually using them effectively here, throwing multiple in the first 90 seconds. Holy shit, Varlins goes for this standing gilly and fucking picks up Huas off his feet like he's hanging him. I have never seen this before. Huas didn't jump here. He literally got put in this gilly and picked up by his neck when Varlins leaned back. They clinch against the cage for a while as Huas tries to get the takedown, and we stay here for several minutes while Huas attempts foot stomps. And would you look at that, Big John can break them up, even if they are standing. That's weird that we asked that question earlier, and then you actually see the payoff in the main event. They always say in the rules the referee can stand them up, so like there could have been the distinction that, well, they're already standing, so I won't break them up. Huas again uses leg kick cheese. Varlins is just purple above the knee at this point. Huas keeps ripping leg kicks and making Varlins move, so he has to keep walking on the bad leg. He knocks Varlins down with a leg kick and then finishes him off with ground and pound. Marco Huas is the UFC 7 tournament champion. He is going to the Ultimate, no check, no interview, just the belt. And that is the end of UFC 7 Brawl in Buffalo. This was actually the last event UFC would have in New York until Conor versus Alvarez for the lightweight championship at Madison Square Garden. Now that is because after this event here in Buffalo, 1995, MMA was banned in the state of New York, and after having watched this, I cannot for the life of me understand why. Like, this event had 9,000 people at it, right? It was a pretty fucking big crowd at this point in the game, right? Where it's all word of mouth, it's people buying videotapes to watch it and then telling their friends about it because, like, you know they're not getting any ads running for this stuff. But, like, there was nothing here that made me think that this event was so barbaric that we can't have it back in New York. Like, I remember watching the first events in Denver. There was kids in the audience. Now, I don't remember seeing any kids here, right? But surely if that's the concern, you can put an age cap on the tickets. But nobody gets slimed out like John Matua at UFC 6. Nobody get fucked up like Scott Morris or Orlando Veit at UFC 2. And I mean, maybe that is why they didn't want it in New York, because what had happened at previous events. But, like, nobody gets seriously fucked up. Like, all that stuff could happen in a boxing ring, so it doesn't make any sense to me. If anyone in the comments can elaborate why UFC was banned in New York, that would be very helpful. But all in all, not a terrible event. Like, really, some good opening round fights. I thought the tournament, to be honest, ranked somewhere towards, like, maybe the bottom end of middle. Like, it wasn't so offensively bad like the first two tournaments, but it also wasn't that entertaining like UFC 3 or 6. So it would probably be somewhere in the middle. Like, we might need to do a video on that someday, maybe after we review like the first 10 tournaments. We can rank them all, but the super fight was god-awful and has come to be expected now. Need some more complementary styles in there. We've only had jiu-jitsu and wrestling, which probably contributes to these matches being a bit boring, but Severn versus Shamrock 1 was the best one we've had so far, and it was over in 3 minutes. But we will see what happens at our next super fight in UFC 8, where Chemo is back. The long-awaited return to the octagon. He will fight Ken Shamrock for the super fight championship. Before we get there, though, we have a quick detour to UFC 7.5, also known as the Ultimate. We are going back to our roots at the Mammoth Garden Centre, or just Mammoth Gardens, actually, home of UFC 2 in Denver, Colorado, where we have an all-star lineup to compete in UFC's toughest tournament yet. We have Dan Severn, Taktarov, Huas, Tabk Abbott, and now we have judges, so no more of this 30 minutes to a draw bullshit. Now we'll have 30 minutes to a winner. I'm sure it will be a good one, folks. Hit subscribe and the notify bell so you can follow me on this journey through hysteria known as the early days of UFC. Remember to like and comment your own thoughts below, and I will see you all next time.